I stood in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, watching my wife butter her toast, and realized I'd been holding my breath for 17 years. The safety I'd built felt like a cage. That same afternoon, a stranger smiled at me outside a coffee shop, and something inside me cracked wide open. If my story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe, and share your own journey in the comments below. My name is Dexter, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had everything figured out. I married Lucia when I was 26. We met at a friend's barbecue in Oklahoma City, back when I was working as a municipal stormwater engineer, and she was finishing her nursing degree. She had this easy laugh and a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. We fell into a relationship that felt natural, expected, right in all the ways I'd been taught to measure rightness. Our life together was genuinely good. We bought a small house in the Mesta Park neighborhood, with a front porch and a backyard big enough for the vegetable garden Lucia loved tending. I went to work every day analyzing drainage systems and flood mitigation plans. She worked night shifts at the hospital 3 times a week. We had routines: Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday evening walks around the neighborhood, an annual trip to her parents' place in Tulsa for Thanksgiving. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all that comfort and routine, there was a tension I couldn't name. I noticed men differently than I noticed women, not in some sudden dramatic way. It was quieter than that. A glance that lasted a beat too long. An awareness of a man's presence in a room that felt electric in a way I couldn't explain. I told myself everyone felt that way sometimes. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I loved Lucia. I want to be clear about that. She was my best friend, my partner, someone I respected deeply. But there was a part of me I kept locked away, even from myself, especially from myself. When I turned 42, something shifted. Maybe it was the birthday itself, that arbitrary marker that made me take stock of how much life I'd already lived. Maybe it was the quiet accumulation of years spent not quite being myself. Whatever it was, I started feeling restless in a way I couldn't ignore. I'd catch myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wondering who I'd become, wondering who I might have been if I'd been braver. The word brave felt strange to apply to my own life. I'd never thought of myself as a coward, but I also couldn't deny that I'd spent decades avoiding certain questions. One afternoon in late April, I took a break from work and walked to a coffee shop on Western Avenue called The Daily Grind. I'd been there dozens of times, but that day felt different. I ordered my usual black coffee and sat by the window with a planning document I was supposed to review. That's when I saw him. He was standing outside, leaning against the brick wall, scrolling through his phone, probably in his early 30s. Dark hair, glasses, wearing a faded denim jacket and jeans. Nothing extraordinary, really. But something about the way he stood there, the slight smile on his face as he read something on his screen, made my chest tighten. He glanced up, saw me watching through the window, and smiled. Not a polite stranger smile. A real one, warm and direct, like he was genuinely pleased to make eye contact with me. I looked away immediately, my face burning. When I looked back, he was gone. I sat there for another 20 minutes, unable to focus on the document in front of me. My hands were shaking slightly. I felt ridiculous. A 42-year-old man flustered by a smile from a stranger. But I also felt something else. A crack in the careful architecture I'd built around my life. A sliver of light coming through. That night, Lucia asked if I was okay. "You've been quiet lately," she said. We were sitting on the couch, half watching a crime procedural she liked. "Is something going on at work?" "Just a big project," I said. "Nothing serious." She nodded, accepted the answer, went back to her show. I hated lying to her. Even a lie by omission. But what was I supposed to say? That I couldn't stop thinking about a stranger's smile? That I was starting to question everything about the life we'd built together? Over the next few weeks, I couldn't get that moment out of my head. The man outside the coffee shop became a symbol of something larger, a door I'd spent my whole life walking past, pretending I didn't see. I started doing something I'd never allowed myself to do before. I let myself look. Really look at men in grocery stores, at the gym, in passing cars. I let myself acknowledge what I felt, even if only privately. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I also started researching. Late at night, when Lucia was asleep, I'd sit in the home office with my laptop and read articles about late-in-life coming-out stories. I found forums where men my age talked about discovering or finally accepting their sexuality after years of marriage, children, conventional lives. Some of the stories were hopeful. Others were heartbreaking. I wasn't sure which category mine would fall into. One story in particular stuck with me. A man in his 50s who wrote about finally accepting he was gay after decades of marriage. He described it as coming home to himself. That phrase lodged in my chest like a stone. Coming home to myself. Was that what this was? In early June, I went back to the daily grind. I told myself it was just because I liked their coffee, but I knew better. Some part of me was hoping to see him again. The man with the smile, he wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Lightning doesn't strike twice like that. But someone else noticed me. I was sitting at the same window seat, pretending to work on my laptop, when a voice said, "Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." I looked up. A man in his late 30s, sandy blonde hair, wearing a t-shirt from a local indie bookstore. He had an open, friendly face and was holding a cup of tea and a thick paperback novel. "Sure," I said. "Go ahead." "Thanks." He sat down across from me, set his book on the table. I glanced at the cover. Something about urban planning theory. "You come here a lot?" he asked. "Sometimes," I said. "You?" "Every Saturday morning. It's part of my ritual. Coffee shop, book, a few hours of peace before the world gets loud." He smiled. "I'm Raymond." "Dexter." We shook hands across the table. That small, ordinary interaction changed everything. Raymond and I started talking that morning, and somehow an hour passed without me noticing. He worked as a municipal housing policy analyst, reviewing affordable housing proposals and community development projects. We had enough professional overlap to make conversation easy, but it wasn't really the work talk that kept me engaged. It was the way he listened. The way he asked follow-up questions like he actually cared about the answers. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Before we parted ways, he said, "This was nice. If you're here next Saturday, maybe we could do it again." "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." I spent the entire week thinking about that conversation. Replaying moments. The way he'd leaned forward when I was talking about a particularly frustrating drainage project. The way he'd laughed at a dumb joke I made about zoning codes. It felt dangerous, letting myself anticipate seeing him again, but I couldn't help it. The following Saturday, I showed up at the daily grind at the same time. Raymond was already there, sitting at a different table this time near the back. He waved when he saw me. We fell into an easy rhythm after that. Most Saturdays, we'd meet at the coffee shop and talk for an hour or two, sometimes about work, sometimes about books or local politics or the strange quirks of Oklahoma City. He told me about growing up in a small town in Kansas, about moving to the city for college and never leaving. I told him about my work, about Lucia's nursing schedule, about the garden we were trying to keep alive through the summer heat. I didn't tell him about the questions I was asking myself late at night. But I think he knew anyway. One Saturday in July, after we'd been doing this for about a month, Raymond said, "Can I ask you something personal?" My heart kicked against my ribs. "Sure. Are you happy?" It was such a simple question, but it landed like a punch. "I don't know," I said. And then, because honesty felt like the only option in that moment, I added, "I used to think I was." Raymond nodded slowly. He didn't push, didn't ask me to explain. He just said, I get that. We sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the kind of silence where something important was being acknowledged without needing words. As the summer went on, I started looking forward to those Saturday mornings more than anything else in my week. Raymond became the person I thought about when I woke up, when I was driving to work, when I was sitting across from Lucia at dinner. It scared me how much space he was taking up in my head. In August, Raymond invited me to a community meeting about a new park development project on the north side of the city. I think you'd find it interesting, he said. And honestly, I could use someone to talk to afterward. These meetings can get intense, I went. We sat in the back of a crowded community center, listening to residents argue passionately about green space and funding priorities. Afterward, we grabbed dinner at a small Vietnamese place on Classen Boulevard. The conversation flowed easily like it always did. But there was something different that night. A charge in the air between us. When we left the restaurant, Raymond walked me to my car. We stood there in the parking lot under the streetlights, and I knew something was about to shift. I could feel it in the way he was looking at me. Dexter, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. My throat went dry. Okay, I really value our friendship. These Saturdays, they've become one of the best parts of my week. But I also need to be honest with you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm attracted to you. And I think you might feel something similar. But I also know you're married, and I'm not trying to complicate your life. I just thought you should know where I stand. I stood there, heart pounding, unable to speak. You don't have to say anything, Raymond continued. I just wanted to be honest. If this makes things weird and you don't want to meet up anymore, I understand. It's not weird, I finally managed. And I do feel something. I've been feeling it for a while now. I just don't know what to do about it. Raymond nodded. That's fair. We stood there for another moment, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. Then I got in my car and drove home. That night, lying in bed next to Lucia, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. Raymond had put words to something I'd been trying to ignore for months. Years, really. Maybe my whole life I was attracted to him, deeply. And it wasn't just physical attraction, though. That was certainly part of it. I wanted to be near him. I wanted to hear his thoughts, his stories, his laugh. I wanted to know him in ways I'd never let myself want to know anyone before. But I was also married. I'd made vows. I'd built a life with someone I cared about. What kind of person throws that away? Over the next few weeks, I pulled back from seeing Raymond. I told him I needed some space to think, and he respected that without question. But the distance didn't make things clearer. It just made me realize how much I missed him. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Janet Moreau, and her office was in a quiet building near Mesta Park. I told her everything. The years of suppressing certain feelings, the attraction to Raymond, the guilt and confusion and fear. What are you most afraid of? She asked during one session. Hurting Lucia, I said immediately. She doesn't deserve this. That's true, Dr. Moreau said gently. But you also don't deserve to spend your life denying who you are. Both things can be true at once. In September, I finally worked up the courage to talk to Lucia. We were sitting on the back porch after dinner, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head. But when the moment came, all those careful words evaporated. Lucia, I need to tell you something. And I don't know how to say it without hurting you. She turned to look at me, concern in her eyes. What is it? I've been struggling with something for a long time. Probably longer than I've been willing to admit. I took a breath. I think I'm gay. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Lucia's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, confusion, sadness. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. How long have you known? She asked quietly. I've had questions for years, but I've only really started facing them in the last few months. Is there someone else? I hesitated. There's someone I've developed feelings for, but nothing has happened between us. I wouldn't do that to you. Tears started sliding down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry, I said, my own voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. You've been nothing but good to me, and you deserve so much better than this. We sat there together crying as the sky turned purple and the streetlights flickered on. Eventually, Lucia said, I think I need some time to process this. Can you stay at your brother's place for a few days? Of course, I said. Whatever you need. I packed a bag that night and drove to my brother's apartment across town. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a pillow and set up the couch for me. The next week was one of the hardest of my life. Lucia and I talked on the phone a few times, careful and tender conversations where we tried to figure out what came next. She was hurt, understandably, but she was also trying to understand. I keep thinking about all the years we've been together, she said during one call. Were you unhappy the whole time? No, I said honestly. I wasn't unhappy. I loved our life. I loved you. I still do. But there was always this part of me that felt like it was sleeping, and now it's waking up, and I don't know how to put it back to sleep. I don't think I can. I don't want you to, she said quietly. I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. Her grace in that moment broke my heart all over again. We decided to separate. It was mutual, though painful. Lucia deserved a partner who could love her fully without reservation. And I needed to figure out who I was outside of the life we'd built together. I moved into a small apartment in the Paseo Arts District. It was strange. Living alone for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the silence felt enormous. But it also felt like space to breathe. I reached out to Raymond in late October. We met at a park near Lake Hefner, walking along the trail as the autumn light turned everything golden. I told Lucia, I said. We're separating. Raymond stopped walking. How are you doing with that? It's hard, I admitted. But it also feels right. Or at least it feels necessary. And what about us? Raymond asked carefully. I looked at him. At this man who'd somehow become the catalyst for me finally being honest with myself. I don't know yet, I said. I need time to figure out who I am before I can figure out what I want with someone else. But I want you in my life. If you're willing to wait while I work through this, I can wait, Raymond said softly. The months that followed were some of the most difficult and transformative of my life. Lucia and I finalized our separation in November. We met with a mediator to divide our assets and handle the practical details of untangling 17 years of shared life. She kept the house. I didn't fight her on it. It felt like the least I could do. The hardest part wasn't the logistics. It was seeing the sadness in her eyes every time we met. Knowing I'd put it there. Knowing that my journey toward honesty had cost her the future she'd imagined. But Lucia surprised me. One afternoon in early December, we met for coffee at a neutral spot downtown. She looked tired but calmer than I'd seen her in weeks. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, and I've started seeing a therapist too. How's that going? I asked. It's helping. She's been helping me understand that this isn't really about me. It's not something I did wrong or something I could have fixed. You are who you are, she paused. I'm angry sometimes and sad. But I'm also starting to see that staying in a marriage where you couldn't be yourself wouldn't have been fair to either of us. You're being incredibly generous, I said. I'm trying. She gave me a small smile. I want you to be happy, Dexter. I really do, even if it took me a while to get there. That conversation gave me permission to move forward without quite so much guilt weighing me down. I started building a new life. Slowly at first. I joined a local LGBTQ support group for people who came out later in life. Hearing other people's stories helped me feel less alone. There were men in their 50s and 60s who were just starting to live authentically. There were people who'd lost families and rebuilt new ones. There were people who'd found unexpected joy on the other side of their fear. Raymond and I took things slowly. We saw each other once or twice a week, usually just for coffee or walks. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our fears, our hopes for the future. He told me about his own coming-out experience at 19, how his family had struggled to accept it but eventually came around. I told him about the years I'd spent convinced I could ignore what I felt. "Do you wish you'd figured it out sooner?" he asked one afternoon in January. We were sitting in his apartment drinking tea and watching snow fall outside the window. "Sometimes," I said, "but I also don't know if I would have been ready before now. Maybe I needed those years to get to a place where I could actually face this." "That's a generous way to look at it," Raymond said. "I'm trying to be less hard on myself," I admitted. "Shame doesn't help anyone." In February, Raymond asked if I wanted to go on an actual date. Not just coffee or a walk, but a real date. Dinner and a movie, the whole traditional setup. I said yes. We went to a small Italian restaurant in the Plaza District, then saw a film at the Art House Theater nearby. It was such a normal evening, simple, but it felt monumental to me. This was the first time I'd ever been on a date with a man, the first time I'd allowed myself to be seen in public with someone I had romantic feelings for. Halfway through dinner, Raymond reached across the table and took my hand. "Is this okay?" he asked. My heart was racing. But I nodded. "Yeah, it's okay." No one in the restaurant seemed to notice or care. The world didn't end. Lightning didn't strike. It was just two people holding hands over pasta. That night marked a turning point. I stopped waiting for permission to be happy. I stopped apologizing for who I was. Raymond and I grew closer over the next few months. He was patient with me as I navigated all the firsts I'd never allowed myself. The first kiss. The first time I said I love you to a man and meant it romantically. The first time I introduced him to someone as my boyfriend. That last one happened in April. My brother Marcus came to visit for the weekend. I'd come out to him over the phone a few months earlier, and he'd been supportive but cautious, wanting to make sure I was okay. "I want you to meet Raymond," I told him. "You sure?" Marcus asked. "I'm sure. We met for lunch at a barbecue place on Western Avenue." I could tell Marcus was nervous, trying too hard to make conversation. But Raymond handled it with grace, asking Marcus about his work as an aviation mechanic and genuinely listening to the answers. By the end of the meal, Marcus pulled me aside. "He's good for you," he said. "I can see it." "Yeah," I said. "He is." Coming out to the rest of my family was harder. My parents were in their 70s and had very traditional views about marriage and sexuality. When I told them over the phone in May, there was a long silence. "I don't understand," my mother finally said. "You were married to Lucia for 17 years. I know, Mom, but I wasn't being honest with myself. Or with her." "This is going to take some time for us to process," my father said stiffly. "I understand," I said. "But I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just telling you who I am." We didn't speak for several weeks after that. It hurt, but I'd expected it. Dr. Moreau reminded me that I couldn't control how other people responded, only how I chose to live my life. In late June, my mother called. "Your father and I have been talking," she said. "We don't fully understand this, but you're our son and we love you. We're going to try." It wasn't a perfect acceptance speech, but it was a start. By the summer, I'd been living as an openly gay man for almost a year. I'd joined a recreational softball league with other LGBTQ adults. I'd made new friends who understood this version of me. I'd started to feel at home in my own skin in a way I never had before. Raymond and I talked about the future. He wanted to know if I saw us going long-term. "I do," I said. "I know it's still relatively new, but I've never felt this sure about anything." "Good," he said, kissing my forehead. Because I'm not going anywhere. In August, Lucia reached out to me. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, nervous about what she might want to discuss. We met at a place near her work. She looked different, lighter somehow. She'd cut her hair short and was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. You look good, I said. Thanks. So do you, she smiled. I wanted to tell you something. I've started seeing someone. His name is Raymond. He's a teacher at the school where I work. That's great, Lucia, really. I wanted you to hear it from me, she said. And I also wanted to tell you that I'm okay. It took me a while to get here, but I'm okay. We both deserve to be happy. We do, I agreed. Before we parted ways, Lucia hugged me. Thank you for being honest, she whispered, even though it was hard. Thank you for understanding, I said. In September, Raymond suggested we take a trip together. Let's go somewhere we've never been. Just the two of us. We chose Santa Fe, New Mexico. We spent a long weekend exploring art galleries, hiking in the mountains, and eating incredible food. One evening, we were sitting on the patio of our rental casita, watching the sunset paint the desert pink and gold. I'm really glad I met you, Raymond said. Me too, I said. You changed my life. You changed your own life, he corrected gently. I just happened to be there when you were ready. Maybe he was right. Maybe all of this had been inside me all along, waiting for the right moment to emerge. But I also knew that meeting Raymond had been the catalyst. He'd shown me what it looked like to live authentically, to be comfortable in your own skin, to not apologize for who you loved. By the time we returned to Oklahoma City, I felt different. Settled in a way I'd never been before. I wasn't waiting for my real life to start anymore. This was my real life, messy and imperfect and mine. In October, Raymond asked if I wanted to move in with him. I know we've only been officially together for about 8 months, he said. But we've known each other for over a year now, and I love having you around. What do you think? I thought about the small apartment I'd been living in. It had served its purpose, a transitional space while I figured things out, but it had never felt like home. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We moved in together in November. Raymond had a 2-bedroom house in the Linwood neighborhood with a small backyard and a front porch. It felt right in a way my previous house never quite had. I brought my few belongings, and we spent a weekend rearranging furniture and deciding where everything should go. It felt like playing house, except this time it was real. This time, I was fully present. One evening, after we'd finished unpacking, we sat on the back porch with beers, looking at the bare trees in the yard. What are you thinking about? Raymond asked. Just how different my life is now compared to a year and a half ago, I said. I never imagined I'd be here, happy, with you. Are you? Raymond asked. Happy? I looked at him. At this man who'd been patient and kind and honest with me even when I couldn't be honest with myself. Yeah, I said. I really am. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was still work to do. I was still rebuilding relationships with family members who were struggling to understand. I still had moments of grief over the life I'd left behind, the years I'd lost to fear and denial. But I also had something I'd never had before. A sense of wholeness, a feeling of coming home to myself, just like that article had described. Raymond reached over and took my hand. We sat there in the gathering dark, content in the silence. My late bloomer journey had led me through pain and confusion and loss, but it had also led me here, to authenticity, to love, to a life that finally felt like my own. And sitting on that porch, with Raymond's hand in mine and the stars beginning to appear overhead, I realized that I wouldn't change a thing. Not the years of questioning, not the difficult conversations, not the fear or the uncertainty, because all of it had brought me to this moment, and this moment was exactly where I needed to be. I'd spent so much of my life trying to fit into a shape that wasn't mine, trying to be the person I thought I was supposed to be. But now, at 43 years old, I was finally learning what it meant to be myself. It wasn't always easy. Some days were still hard. I missed aspects of my old life. The simplicity of it. The way everything had fit into neat categories. But I didn't miss the constant low-level anxiety. The feeling that I was performing rather than living. The sense that some essential part of me was locked away where no one, including myself, could see it. Raymond stood up and pulled me to my feet. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside. I'll make dinner." "What are we having?" I asked. "Whatever we can scrounge from the fridge," he said, laughing. "We forgot to go grocery shopping." We walked inside together, into the warm light of our shared home. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready for it, all of it, the ordinary moments and the extraordinary ones, the challenges and the joys, the whole messy, beautiful experience of living as my true self. My journey as a late bloomer had taught me something important. It's never too late to be honest. It's never too late to change course. It's never too late to choose authenticity over comfort. And while I wished I could tell my younger self that everything would turn out okay, I also understood that he'd needed to take his own path to get here. We all do. That night, lying in bed next to Raymond, I felt a deep sense of peace. The kind that only comes from finally being honest with yourself and the people you love. My story wasn't unique. Countless people had walked similar paths before me, and countless more would walk them after. But it was mine, and that made it precious. I thought about the man outside the coffee shop who'd smiled at me that day in April, almost 2 years ago now. I'd never seen him again, never learned his name, but that smile had been the first crack in the dam I'd built around my truth. Sometimes the smallest moments change everything. A smile from a stranger, a conversation over coffee, a question asked with genuine care. "Are you happy?" These tiny moments of grace that redirect the course of our lives. I pulled Raymond closer, and he murmured something in his sleep.